Hi, guys, and welcome to the Wellness with Delaney podcast. Today, I'm with Coach Kylie Churnetski. She is a health and wellness coach, a registered dietitian, RYT, personal trainer. I mean, all the different things, really just health and wellness extraordinaire. So we are just going to have an amazing conversation with you guys to talk about why women aren't losing weight when they want to, common struggles we're seeing, fitness, attacking those fitness goals, all the different things. It's going to be a jam-packed episode for you today. Kylie, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, of course. I'm ready. Bring it on. As you mentioned, my background, I'm a registered dietitian, personal trainer, yoga therapist, and national board certified health and wellness coach, as well as a couple of lapsed, group fitness certifications that, I use in my one-on-one sessions, but otherwise not too much anymore. But with that all being said, gives me a really well-rounded space to be able to talk about nutrition, exercise, lifestyle choices from a health professional's perspective, but also from the trendy girl perspective. Because let's be honest, no one's ignoring social media nowadays. So really making sure, at least one of my large goals is making sure authentic information gets put on social media that you can follow, that you can enjoy, that really gets you to where you want to be health-wise rather than more of the fads and trends.
I love that so much. Yeah, there are so many fads and trends circulating social media. And obviously there's some truth to some of them. Some of them are really just ancient wisdom being discovered or people learning. But then at the same time, we have so many influencers who are sharing things that might not be the healthiest. And we are definitely going to get into that today because I think it's really important to be drawing proper resources that will actually help people attack their goals, not just in the short term, but in the long term. So what are some of the common reasons why women who want to lose weight are not losing weight?
Well, I think we can start with social media since we're already there. I think if I could go type into my Google search right now, weight loss or how to lose weight fast or whatever else is millions, maybe even billions of results are going to come up. Hundreds of supplements, hundreds of brands selling you powders and waist trainers and different workouts and different supplements and fat burners and everything else. Where do you start when you have that many things coming up? And then don't forget, your cousin told you about keto and how it changed her life. And then your other friend said she's doing intermittent fasting. There's just so much information out there. And really the challenge is, and I'll be straightforward. Sorry if whatever, you got to fine tune through the bullshit. There's a lot of it out there. And you're right. Sometimes there is a grain of salt, and I'll give it that. But when we're in a world where, for example, I ordered something from Amazon last night and I was bummed it's not coming today. Unfortunately, it's coming later this week. And I was like, oh, that's frustrating. We're in a world where we want things here and now. Same with our, weight loss or any of our other goals, career, health, life-wise. We want them fast, but we have to really hone into what's authentic to be able to make weight loss attainable. And so I would say some of the common themes that I see in regards to unsuccessful weight loss are, giving you a little bit of a bullet, thinking that calorie deficits are the way to go. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they aren't. I'm saying that I'm seeing a really severe calorie deficit where we're not eating enough daily. It's actually hurting your metabolism. It's slowing down. It means your body's actually taking nutrients and energy from your muscle mass, which is the exact opposite of what you want to do. So it's almost working in backwards. Then I also see people overexercising, doing the high intensity workout classes, working out twice a day, really overstimulating the body without having rest, which takes, again, similar concept, taking from our glycogen stores is when we're in our short-term rest phases. It's actually going to be taking from our muscle mass again. So you're not getting the tone, you're not losing the weight. Instead, we're kind of working in the opposite gist. Those I would say are two really common ones, but I think an overall general perspective is we just don't know what we're doing. We're kind of throwing pasta at the wall, hoping something sticks. And that's a lot of what we see on social media. Something stuck for someone, and that's great. And they're talking about it, and it's good for awareness, but not everyone's the same. I don't practice a one-size-fits-all approach. You're not going to get just some standardized meal plan or workout because I'm not the same as Delaney. I'm not the same as my neighbor. Everyone's bodies and goals and health concerns are different. And so we have to really treat it that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a one size fits one approach, right? Like we all have different hormones, we all have different deficiencies and different makeups. And if you get into like even the traditional Chinese medicine aspect of it, like how everyone has their different, like the yin versus yang balance, like how's your blood, how's your lymph, all these different things. And you have to treat the body as a unique vessel. I do want to capture, okay, so you mentioned calorie deficit. And I think a lot of people have this idea that if they want to lose weight, they need to eat fewer calories because it's calories in, calories out. And you're saying that's not necessarily the case. So what would the alternative be that you would suggest to your clients?
Well, so again, this is not the perfect science, everyone. Unfortunately, I can't be here and spit out the perfect information for you guys. It's an individualized approach. And so I'll kind of tell you a little story, and maybe this helps make it a little bit more sense. Perhaps, I'm going to say client, this one client that I worked with, let's call her D, for example. And she came to me saying, hey, I'm really low energy, but I'm also just feeling like a lot of fat and bloating around my stomach, like nothing's fitting the same anymore since college. She's working, she's kind of struggling to feel confident and comfortable. And when we first started working together, we get a baseline. Like, I don't want to influence you in any way. I'm like, don't eat 3 salads a day. Like, I'm not judging you. I just want to see what's going on so we have the accurate suggestions to tweak. And we suddenly realized she was eating less than what a 9-year-old needed to eat a day. And she thought that was good because less is more, right? If I'm eating less, it means I'm working harder towards my goals. But in reality, that's not how it works. And so really she was stunting her body, her hunger cues. We have hormones that tell us when we're full and when we're hungry, and those are being suppressed. And then on top of that, she's not fueling, even though she's working out and she's doing all these things. So I had her double that quantity. Now, I'll be honest, like that still was a deficit for her, but numbers matter. And really, the challenge here is that everyone's numbers are the same, which is why I said this isn't a perfect science. It's why working with a registered dietitian is so important, because we have medical nutrition therapy backgrounds. We go through a 4-year undergrad university, then you go get a master's, then you do your residency. I had to do research with the International Board of Research. We're really in the depths compared to somebody who says, yeah, I got my Google nutrition certification and it took them a week or 48 hours or whatever else that looks like. It would be like, me saying, oh, like I have a cold and I need to see a doctor. I'm going to go find one on Craigslist. And so in the reality, I'm looking at a couple factors here. What's your age, your height, your weight, your activity levels, but I'm also looking at what health conditions are present. What does your metabolism look like? How active are we? What are your goals for your health in the short term and in the long term? And all of those things play a large factor into the numbers that are created for you and your body. So like I said, we doubled what she was eating. And I swear, Delaney, she was like, Kylie, I think you're crazy. There's no way. I'm not sure if I trust you. And I was like, you know what? That's fine. Like we just started together. That's okay. But give me, 2 months and I will prove you wrong. And, here we are. Gosh, this was like 5 years ago at this point, but she still updates me. And I love seeing her updates. And really, even in our short time of working together, it showed up. And she's like, you weren't wrong. And it's really about learning exactly what your body needs and tailoring to that, rather than trying, the fad diets and the fad recipes, really learning the educational basis. I'm really big on foundation. If you don't understand it and you're just kind of following different plans or following different TikToks or Reels or whatever else it is, you don't really understand it. And when those things go away or when things change, you don't have anything and you're kind of free floating. And that's really when burnout or give up comes into play. And so if we can learn education behind what we're doing, it makes it easier to go grocery shopping and to plan out what you want to eat and to have snacks on deck and everything else like that to really set you up for success and make it foolproof instead of running into those obstacles.
Amazing. Yeah, I think so many people don't realize that there are so many functions of the body and all of them need calories to function. So if we're in an extreme deficit all the time, we're also going to see a decline in brain function. We're going to see decline in energy. There's so many things that need calories, and it's not as simple as calories in, calories out all the time. So you mentioned over exercising. Why would exercising all the time prevent somebody from losing weight?
100%. So there's a couple things that I look at here, and I feel like I've been preaching to the choir. I'm more of a conversation girly, so give me one more sec to preach to the choir, and then let's have fun convos today. When we overexercise, ladies, whether that's really intensive fitness classes or we're doing double workouts a day or really just moving your body too much without rest, it's not giving your body time to catch up. Like Delaney said, there are so many cellular functions that are happening. We're not thinking about it. Like I'm breathing right now, but I'm not actively thinking about it. My heart's working right now. It's circulating to my body. I'm not thinking about that. I totally just chugged some water a second ago on this call. My body's digesting it. Then it's going to go through my kidneys. It's going to detoxify. It's going to filter. And then I'm going to have to go pee after this. All these things are happening that I'm not even thinking about, let alone all the actions you are doing a day, like running, like your intensive classes, like doing workouts. And so we require energy to fuel those things. And what I say and what I preach is food is fuel. You'll notice that you're not successful with weight loss. You'll notice that maybe you're having brain fog, maybe more migraines, more cramping, more injuries, a suppressed immune system, less energy when we're not able to fuel, but we're overexercising. And what happens here from a scientific perspective is that instead of pulling from the fat sources we actually want to lose weight from when overexercising, if we're not fueling and we're not resting, then we're actually taking from our muscle mass, which means, that flat stomach you wanted or that more toned look or building muscle mass or whatever else that looks like for you. Well, that's actually working in reverse because we're actually taking away from those things right now instead of building them up. And so that's one of the big reasons why I really praise having practical balance, not just from a weight loss perspective, but also from a burnout perspective, and creating a consistency that actually works for you and your routine so that you can sustain your goals long term. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And even I think what you're saying goes into so many principles that I try to practice in my own life of like with biohacking, I always say I soft biohack, which is like I take a lot of the principles of it, but I'm not going to make it my God. Like I'm not going to live and breathe biohacking, but I do love a lot of its principles. And HRV is one of the biggest biomarkers. So for those of you guys listening, heart rate variability is a huge biomarker of success in your goals. If you're not resting and your body's constantly in this like sympathetic, stressed out state, your HRV is going to be very low, which means you're staying stressed. So, and like you're saying, with exercise, you need to have that rest to be able to accomplish your goals. You can stress your body out, but you want to return to baseline. And that's where you're going to see those improvements. And I love that you preach that because I'm seeing, especially it's January right now when we're recording, all the 75 hard people, all the over, like we're going to do 500, 600, whatever, like berries and Orange Theory classes this year. Like, I'm like, this is not helping girlies, like, especially for the girls. It's
of course. I mean, it's not helpful for anyone. And I'm sorry I cut you off. I just this gets to my soul because I see these things or I see the Facebook posts of people like, all right, I'm doing the carnivore diet. I'm like, and she's like, the Facebook post I specifically saw, she's like, yeah, and I'm breastfeeding. I just had my kid. I'm sitting here. I'm like, I'm going to have a panic attack if I see this any further. Because at the end of the day, you guys, weight loss, diet culture, it's $1 billion industry. Like they are making money off of you not succeeding so that you try the next thing and the next thing. And ultimately it's letting you feel like a failure. If you can't find a practical plan, then you're never going to get the results you want. Just straight and true about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It is. I mean, it's a business like any other business, like fast fashion, like everything. They're always going to try to sell you something. So you do kind of have to like push through all the noise to find something that's intuitive, that's built on science and ancient wisdom, that's been tried and true. Because ultimately, like it didn't used to be this hard, right? Like people didn't used to struggle this much to stay at a healthy weight, to accomplish their health goals. It used to seem intuitive. Okay, so with that, what are some of the most common health concerns that you're seeing with women these days?
Well, I think that it's a blessing and a curse, right? Health and wellness in the science world is constantly evolving. Unfortunately, it's not evolving at a fast enough rate. A lot of the scientific studies that we've done in the past are mostly done on white middle-aged men, which does not classify one to women, let alone all the diversity that's included in women. And so there's really a lot of challenges in regards to, even for example, we're just starting to do sleep studies and tampon and pad studies that are actually accurate for women. And it's 2024 last year, and we're just talking about it. So let alone all the health stuff. And I'm glad that it's becoming buzzy and trendy from that perspective for women to really not feel gaslit by their providers, to be able to know that, hey, other people experience certain symptoms and you're not alone in this. And it's really allowing for new advocation. I'd say a lot of what I see right now is chronic inflammation, GI concerns, lots of hormone imbalance, predominantly PCOS and things along those lines. I typically say that people come to me for weight loss, and there's always that underlying factor, like, hey, I want to lose weight and I have these GI issues going on, or hey, I want to stop bloating and I have PCOS, or hey, I want to actually gain weight and tone up and I have lupus. And, so there's always an and behind it. And I think that's really where we need to understand that there's always underlying causes. And I'm really big on being that healthcare provider that sits there, listens, understands all your history, is going to remember it 3 months from now when we start to talk about it again, not the provider who sits with you for 15 minutes and then shuffles you out the door and barely remembered your name and pushed some pills at you. Because I've been there. I have autoimmune conditions myself. I've experienced tons of GI issues. And a lot of what I said, like what I heard was, here's some Band-Aid medications to get to your, to manage these symptoms. Change your lifestyle. Good luck. And I'm sitting there at, 14, like, oh, what does that mean? And it took me years, like a good decade, to really understand what my body needed based off of my diagnoses. And I don't want it to take 10 years for people to feel good, to people to understand what works. So I really try to fine tune that process as much as possible so that they get a whole perspective of lifestyle choices, exercise, nutrition that's really fine tuned to them so they can feel good and feel confident as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that it can be really amazing when you've gone through something, right? You've gone through the trenches, and that allows you to help others learn from your experience so that they don't have to go through the trenches as long, and you can, help them out of that, which I absolutely love. And I know obviously in some degree, like the answer is going to be different for every person, but kind of general overview, because I'm seeing a lot of PCOS as well. Like, especially as a health coach, I'm getting so many women reaching out about PCOS and just hormonal imbalances and fertility and everything in general. So for the girlies with PCOS, like, what would be general overview of what you would tend to recommend?
Yeah, so I think, like you mentioned, so let me give my preference. It depends on what's going on. Like, I have some women who come to me with PCOS and they're like, I'm ready for babies. I've been trying for years. I can't figure it out. And some of my clients have coined me a baby maker. I don't want to be a part of your bedroom, but I will, I am happy to see it that, within a couple months of working together and making small but practical adjustments and adding that consistency in, I've had a couple of grown families in my time together of working with clients. I also have people who are not in that phase, but do have PCOS. And they're like, dude, like the irregular periods and the pain or the weight loss and things like that, those are their predominant symptoms. Either way, we're still kind of looking at a main focal point of what's going on with PCOS and how does it impact the body. And if you want some deeper information on this, guys, I do have an episode about the 5 pillars of PCOS on my podcast. You guys are more than welcome to listen to it. I'm sure Delaney's going to link my Instagram and all that jazz. So you'll be able to find it easy. But the 5 pillars, let's talk about them. 1, nutrition management, exercise management, stress management, supplementation, and then the optional 5th is medication. Some people choose to be on medication to manage PCOS. Awesome. I have some people who choose to not be on medication for PCOS. Completely awesome too. It's really more the personal preference of what you choose to do based off of your symptoms and where you're at in your life.
Amazing. Yeah. What are some of the supplements that you like in general for PCOS?
Yeah, again, I feel like this is going to be my coined parrot phrase of today's episode. Like, I just need a little parrot here to say, like, it depends. It depends on the person. Like, for example, I think that berberine is a great supplementation for people who want weight loss and are looking for insulin resistance management. However, berberine's not safe if you're looking to gain fertility and work on having a child. So, for example, those are things that I consider with working for clients. I think that looking at lab work is really important. Diagnosing any deficiencies is important, treating those, looking at things from a balanced perspective of nutrition, and also making sure we're getting enough nutrients that way as well. And really just creating an intertwined perspective of what's best for each person.
Amazing. Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, if people really do want to hear everything and go into it, they can obviously work with you, which I will make sure that they know how to find you at the end of this episode. And then I'm curious, because I know we've talked a little bit about, obviously, you started this episode with weight loss, and we've talked about the exercising, the fitness, whatever, and what not to do. If somebody was coming to you and they want to lose fat and build muscle, I know in general, we can see a lot of different health goals, but what I would say 80% of the people I'm seeing, they tend to have similar goals, even if it's a different approach. What would you say, like if somebody who does want to lose fat and build muscle, as far as like workout regimen, first steps, what would your like general ideas, recommendations be?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of like different ways that you can look at that, right? Like I think there are things that can tend to be more important than weight loss. Like, don't let me throw you back on your chair, make you hit the brake while you're listening to this in the car. We want to make sure that you're improving your health long term. If you have symptoms or conditions, you're managing them, improving circulation, living a longer life. Those things are all great. But let's say, right here, right now, the big motivation that you're being driven by is weight loss. There's a couple things. Making sure that you're eating 3 meals a day plus snacks. And of course, the fine print of that is making sure that's within your nutrition needs. We're balancing protein and fats and carbs the right way to support weight loss, but also doing it in a practical and planned way for being able to grocery shop and being able to be cost efficient when we grocery shop, because inflation sucks, and making sure that you're planning ahead. So suddenly it's not, Friday and you open up the fridge and it's shit, there's nothing there. What do I eat now? It's planning ahead for these types of situations. That's one aspect. Two, I'm really big into low to moderate exercise. So no, not doing the crazy cycle classes, not doing heated yoga where you sweat and you feel like, a wet, slippery seal when you're done, not the crazy stuff, but really creating a low to moderate exercise plan that works well for you, that fits your availability of equipment, whether you're working out at home or you have an apartment gym or a regular gym, or, outside or anything else in between. And that targets specifically the goals you want. Making sure we're getting enough sleep and really loving the body and treating it well that way as well. And lastly, just really making sure your lifestyle is staying true to you, making sure, you're managing your stress, you're supporting your routine, and allowing for consistency and growth throughout the process.
Amazing. Yeah. And I think with the lifestyle part, and this is so real, where healthy can look very different. I think there are obvious indicators of health and obvious indicators of a lack of health, right? However, there is a very broad spectrum of what healthy can look like. And I always tell people this because obviously, for people like you and me, our life in a lot of ways, we live and breathe wellness. That's actually how we met, for the audience. We were in the same health and wellness coaching program in college. And so when people come to me, I'm like, hey, you do not have to be an athlete to be healthy, right? You do not have to be perfect to be healthy, but can you give 80%, right? Can you find a balance that works for you? It doesn't have to be the same level that you see the professionals doing in order to be healthy, or that you see your friend doing, because some people have more bandwidth or some people literally enjoy clean eating and exercising more. So how can you fit that into your lifestyle in a way that's sustainable so you don't burn yourself out and hate your life and then quit in 6 months?
100%.
Yeah, it's important. So, okay, sleep. Why is sleep so important for attacking your fitness goals and your health goals?
Also, exactly. We talked a little bit about the research, middle-aged white male. Yay, we love that. America, woohoo. However, when we're seeing new research, we're actually showing women need 9 to 11 hours of sleep plus an additional hour during menstruation cycles. And the reason is behind this that men require less sleep due to their metabolic processes. Their hormone cycles are only 24 hours. There's a lot of reasons why that works well for them. And we're trying to coin-hole that. And suddenly, I have women coming to me and they're like, yeah, I think I'm sleeping too much. I'm getting 9 hours of sleep. I'm like, no, that's great. As long as you're feeling well rested, we're taking care of you. We're not suppressing your metabolism. We're able to secrete hormones. We're able to secrete all the happies, all the sads, all the angries, all the feelings adequately. Then we're able to live a more functional life. And then that allows for more energy. More energy allows for more sustainable routines. And then we're able to kind of fit our goals into that as well. So there's it's a ripple effect. We have a lot of different things that are impacted by our sleep.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, if you're not sleeping enough and you see that you might be craving more sugar and carbs, like that's a real thing, which actually I did want to ask you about this as well. It kind of leads into it. I know a lot of people who struggle with binge eating and they're on a cycle for many different reasons, right? It could be lack of sleep. It could be like suppressing cravings for a long period of time, like whatever. What are some of your tips as a dietitian for people who want to reduce their binge eating tendencies?
Yeah, so I think we have to acknowledge that binge eating is more than just a buzzword. It's a disordered eating pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not normal. And just because I'm saying that doesn't mean you're not normal. It means the pattern that you're in is not what's going to support your body best. And we have to acknowledge why this is happening and understand the root cause of the binge eating before we can really move forward on supporting success. For example, somebody who has more binge eating tendencies because of emotional experiences and stress is going to look a little bit different than somebody who binge eats for different purposes, whether it's body image or food and flavors or, all of these different reasons. It looks different per person. So for example, I worked with a client, mid last year, and she really struggled with binge eating and she wanted to lose weight. And, I said weight loss and she also has thyroid issues. And when we really looked at the binge eating at the end of the day, we noticed, yes, it comes in that nighttime period for her. Yes, it really evolves around these specific types of foods. And it usually happens because XYZ happened earlier in the day. And so when looking at her specific situation, it was, okay, well, you're not eating enough protein. So naturally, of course, you're hungry by 8, 9, 10 p.m. because your body hasn't been fed well. Of course, you're hungry. You skip breakfast every morning. Of course, these foods sound better because we're not sustaining balanced, complete meals and snacks throughout the rest of the day. And so as we adjusted, it's not a perfect process, but I'll be happy to report, she updated me recently. She's been almost, math in my head's hard. Give me 1 second. 9.5 months of no binging. And the reason why is we educated and created a foundation. What is a complete meal? What are the nutrients? Why are they important? Busting any shitty myths from online, and then planned ahead and stopped the procrastinating and stopped the hiccups or the obstacles specific to her. And that really meant creating a game plan for foods that sound good, that honor our heart, our emotions, and our taste buds, while also honoring her goals and creating balance. Like, sure, you can still have chips and dip. That was one of her favorites. But can we make sure we do it after eating dinner? And if you're still hungry, then set up a game plan for that rather than being like, oh my gosh, I'm so starving. I haven't eaten much today. And then eating 3 bags that night, I'm a big believer in all foods fit. I'd be really sad if I never ate a chocolate bar again, or I couldn't go through the In-N-Out drive-through, because that's not practical. And I preach practicality. So it's okay to eat your favorite foods, but we want to do it in a balanced and supportive way so that you can honor that while also honoring what your goals are for your health.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think with binging too, and like in this specific scenario, which I love because there are obviously so many reasons and I want to stay sensitive to that because it can have, there can be emotional, traumatic, historic, like different reasons for binging, but specifically for if we're looking at a lack of satiation, right? And a lack of fueling throughout the day. It makes it so like if you're, okay, let's say you're like curling like a 5-pound dumbbell, right? Really easy for most. But if you're doing that for 24 hours straight, eventually your arm is going to get very sore. And that's how it can be for people with binging. I feel like you're trying so hard to stay disciplined and you're like using self-control. But when you're relying on self-control and fighting your body and fighting your brain, eventually you're going to give up because our bodies are not meant to be in that state of self-control all the time. So how can we find true food freedom? And I think that's what's really powerful. A lot of people don't realize that like they can actually experience freedom where they're not constantly bombarded with this like desire to to eat snacks until they feel sick.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like what I ultimately want for people, because it's not fun to live in this place where you're battling your brain and battling your body. And I guess little anecdote, like I used to struggle with that a lot back when I was vegan, and I didn't realize I wasn't eating nearly enough protein, and I didn't understand like leptin and ghrelin. And I'm going to ask you about that next because I think it's really important. But I didn't realize that I literally was not satiating my body until I started eating steak. And then I was like, wait, I'm satiated. I don't crave a box of crackers. I don't crave all these like hyper palatable foods, because I literally, my body feels satiated. Like that went away. And I think that was a really powerful paradigm shift for me, where I was no longer like curling that dumbbell all day of self-control.
Yeah.
And suddenly like the desire to binge went away. And for me, that was so powerful that like I want other people to experience that, because it's a very exhausting way to live when you're constantly in battle.
100%. I
So
completely
yeah, no, it's no way to live. And people should be able to enjoy their lives, enjoy their foods, and not feel this constant guilt and shame and stress around it. So you mentioned like your client wasn't eating enough protein, and that was causing some binging tendencies because she wasn't fueling up. How does protein contribute to satiation?
Right. And I think that, like, just to jump back a hair, when you're talking about food freedom and things like that, I don't want you to feel like there's always two ends of the spectrum, right? Food jail, dieting, food freedom. Can we find a middle ground with balance? And really that's where support and success comes from. And being in that part of balance talks about feeling full, being able to feel satiated, to be able to feel satisfied by your meals for a couple of reasons. One, we got to be satisfied taste bud wise. How many times have you eaten a meal that you thought was healthier and you're like, well, I ate it, but I still want the thing I could have had earlier? Or, things along those lines, where maybe we notice we're eating less protein and then you ate a whole meal and you're like, well, shit, I'm still hungry. That didn't do the job. But we don't necessarily understand right off the bat, hey, it's because I didn't have protein. And it's really why education is important in this background. And so let's talk about it. To have a complete meal, we need a carb source, we need a fat source, we need a protein source. And when we do this and we combine all three of those together for a meal, a couple things happen. One, it's going to give us our best balance of blood sugars throughout the day. Then it's going to also help sustain energy levels longer than if we only ate a carb, or if we only ate a protein, or only ate a fat. Those things are important because it helps us stay full and supported, but we also have to honor our taste buds. So how can we make sure it's a carb, a fat, and a protein that also sound appetizing to us? And so an example I use for a lot of my clients is, yes, technically chicken breast plus broccoli plus white rice plus maybe a little drizzle of olive oil as you cook it technically counts as a complete meal. But if that's your meal prep that you have every single day for 2 months and you're not enjoying it, and all you want is all the foods that you've been missing out on, it's not really sustainable, it's not really practical, and it's not really enjoyable, right? So try to look at it from a couple of different ways here. How can we enjoy the foods that we're eating? Like, for example, if I ran to Jersey Mike's and we're looking at that equation, my sandwich is at the end of the equation. So let's work backwards. My bread, well, I'm a gluten-free girly. So my gluten-free bread is my carb, and I always load up on my tomatoes and pickles and things like that. So those are my carb sources. Then we move on to protein. I usually get the Italian. So it's got deli, chicken and ham and turkey and a little bit of salami on that. That's my protein source. Well, guess what? That salami is a processed meat. So that's also going to be in my fat sources. And I'm drizzling up the vinegar and the oil, which is also healthy fat. And suddenly that equals a complete meal. So I can eat out and feel good about eating out, knowing it's a complete source. But I can also cook something at home and it can also be a complete source. For example, if I want to do a protein pasta for dinner, boom, that hits my carb, it hits my protein. Maybe we add a little bit of ground turkey or ground beef into that. Boom, protein. Depending on the cut of lean ground beef or turkey we're getting, that can count as our fat source. But maybe we're also drizzling up a little bit of olive oil to support some veggie intake, and we do mushrooms or squash or bell peppers or tomatoes or whatever else into that. And that can also be a complete meal. So we got to look at it kind of from that perspective to make sure we're able to support meals and snacks in a way that makes us feel full, but also tastes good.
Amazing. Yeah, you have to enjoy. I think a huge bottom line of a lot of this conversation is if you're not enjoying the process to achieve your goals, it's not going to be sustainable.
So true.
And like we've kind of said over and over, like it can look different for every person, depending on your goals, depending on your lifestyle, depending on your tendencies, right? But how can you enjoy it and how can you set up habits that work for your life and get you closer to your goal? And that's ultimately the goal of what we're doing. So with all of this, like with whether it's healthy weight loss or weight gain, whatever, like building muscle, losing fat, building fat, like whatever, really whatever your goals are, hormones can play a huge role in our health. But people think that our hormones are estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And they don't realize that there are so many other hormones in the body. We're dealing with our cortisol, like all of our adrenals, we're dealing with leptin and ghrelin, like I brought up earlier, like the satiation and the hunger hormones, and so many more. As an expert in diet and in the body, what role do hormones play in people's weight management?
So I think there's a couple large things here that you said. So we've got to unpack right off the bat. We have our leptin and ghrelin, like you mentioned, and you're like, okay, listeners are like, these sound like little, gremlin names. I'm like, by gerbil, ghrelin, what are these? And so really those to start off with are hunger cues. It's our, hey, I'm feeling hungry. You need to feed me. Hey, I'm feeling full. We need to stop. And those get suppressed very easily, especially in the diet culture world we live in today. So one reason they'd get suppressed is if you're under eating, you're not eating enough. Your body does not know when to tell you or how to tell you it's hungry and full, because guess what, girlie, you're not feeding yourself. Another reason that they could get suppressed is when we're overeating or maybe experiencing binging, because our body no longer understands the concepts of hunger and fullness either. And so really stabilizing that space and allowing your metabolism and your hormones and your hunger cues to balance out, really important in regards to maintaining weight, to gaining weight, to losing weight. Another big one that I think is important that you didn't mention yet was insulin. And so that regulates our blood sugar levels. It regulates our energy levels. And the reason that this is important in regards to balance and impacting weight is that it can promote fat storage when it's not properly balanced throughout the bodies. And when they're high levels due to resistance or high sugar intake, it can include, it can lead to that increased fat intake, especially when we see it, we call it metabolic disease, especially around the abdomen. And so again, balanced meals, like we just talked about, is a big component of that one. Another big one you mentioned already was cortisol. So ladies, this is our stress hormone. If you've been on TikTok, or maybe it's just my FYP, this has been really popular lately. People are talking about, puffier faces or higher stress levels or challenges sleeping. Those are all true things, but it's also important to know that we can actually test your cortisol instead of just guessing and assuming and doing all the crazy stuff. There's two ways that we can do it. One is through a blood test and one is non-invasive. It's through a saliva test. And this stress hormone essentially is showing us how the body responds to stress levels. And so if we have higher prolonged versions of stress, it can promote a couple things. And let me back up story time, right? Our bodies, although so complex now, we have so much technological advances, we're looking at really simple experiences still. Like, for example, let's look at cavemen, right? That's essentially where we came from. And there's two different versions. One version, we're safe, we're hanging out, we're in the cave, we've got the fire going, we're full because we caught a couple squirrels, like life is good. The other version, the one that might experience more chronic experiences of stress, our caveman is being chased through, the wild by a bear, by a woolly mammoth, by a mountain lion, take your pick. But that high prolonged stress level is suppressing our autonomic nervous system. And when that happens, it kind of slows everything else down in order to focus on, hey, like, let's not die. And let's be honest, if we're high stress because of family or work or whatever else, we're not dying, but our body's still kind of considering it like that. And it's decreasing certain functions of the body. And so essentially that can increase appetite because our body's functioning on really high levels for certain aspects, but it's also slowing down others, which includes our metabolism and regular support to the body. And so that's another really big hormone. Like you said, though, there's so many hormones within the body. So yes, our thyroid hormones are important. There's a handful of those there that I would test with lab work or through a Dutch test, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, looking at our adrenal functions. There are a lot of ways we can utilize hormones, especially when there's so many that are involved in the body's processes. It's really more about how we look at them and starting with the fundamentals first, starting with diagnoses first before jumping into, maybe more advanced testing or more advanced diagnoses or suggestions. We don't need to start there. Let's start with the foundation and let's see how your body reacts to it. That's kind of my approach, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely makes sense. And I think that these conversations are really important too, because so many people that I see, and I know you probably see too, like feel so stuck. They feel like they're doing all the right things, but seeing no results, right? And maybe they've already gone through that initial, like, okay, well, I'm going to up my protein. I'm going to work out in this way, like X, Y, and Z. But they're not seeing, they've done all these initial steps, right? And they're not seeing results still, or they feel like it's marginal. And it can come down to like very systemic things within our body that when you do get your labs done and when you do start to get some professional help in those areas, it can really be a game changer. I know even for me, I always thought I had fat genes growing up. Like I thought I was just always going to be a little bit like chubby, and I didn't want to be. Like I was a dancer, I was an athlete growing up, but I was like, no matter what I do, like I can be as restrictive, I can be as active. It doesn't make a difference. When I found out I had hypothyroid and then started like holistically working to heal my thyroid, which I actually do mine completely naturally. I've been healing my thyroid with raw beef organs like thyroid and liver, and then mineral and amino acid intake. I'm working with my naturopath on that. And that's been a game changer. And suddenly I was like, wait, I didn't have fat genes. I just didn't have a thyroid that was working for years. And it was so empowering. I'm like, oh my gosh, so many people, men and women, but obviously like I do speak more to women just like being such a girl's girl, but don't realize that even if they're doing all the right things or believe they are, there could be something going on in their body. And if you are in that place and you feel like you're doing everything right, but you're looking on the outside and seeing like, why is it so easy for this girl to have her goal body, but why is it so hard for me? Like, go get your labs done. You might be shocked by what you find. I know I was, but it was also like in the best way, because then you don't feel gaslit anymore, right? Like you have an answer. You're like, wait, I'm not crazy. I don't feel gaslit by my workout regimen and by social media anymore, because I can see what's going on and now I can have practical steps to heal and fix it. And like that's just so much yes, like when you can actually understand your body. And I do love that you help women understand their bodies and work with their bodies instead of against it. Like that's ultimately what we should be doing. Like our bodies do so many things for us, and us taking care of our bodies should be a way of giving back to our bodies, not like fighting against our bodies and battling it, which
Absolutely.
I love. I know you preach that all the time. And with that, like how do you as a health coach come beside women in their mental health?
Yeah, I think that there's a balance to it because as a healthcare provider, being able to have gone through that process of, residency. I've firsthand experienced my low mental health. I was like, I'm just getting through this. Like, let me just finish this, and everything else kind of went on the back burner. So I understand it firsthand. I also, I'm an eldest daughter who has anxiety, and that's a-okay. But owning up to those things, normalizing health and mental health specifically is so important. I own up to my clients. I'm like, yeah, I go to therapy. I think you should too. And, like, let's talk about it as a normal function, because just as much as maybe exercise and nutrition play a role or balance each other out in regards to our success for health, so does mental health. You have to have that third part of the scale. If you're too anxious to do anything and you're so overwhelmed, then exercise and nutrition aren't happening. If you're so stressed out by work or by life or having your family or whatever else is going on that we can't make space for exercise and nutrition, well, your health isn't happening. There's so many reasons why mental health is an important factor. And as a dietitian, as a personal trainer, yoga therapist, health and wellness coach, you have to own up to lifestyle being a really large component of wellness. Sure, I hear the quotes of like, your health is 80% diet, 20% exercise. Sure, like I can own up to diet and exercise being important, but why are we not addressing procrastination? Why are we not addressing motivation, consistency, anxiety, depression, overwhelm, ADHD, any of those things that you're experiencing that are valid that also impact your routine or impact the way you think or take action? That also has to be addressed throughout the process.
Absolutely. It's like there's so many different circles of health, right? It's social, emotional, physical, spiritual, financial. Like there are so many things that matter in health. And I know we learned that in college together, but it's not just the things that you see on the outside. It can be the things that are happening on the inside that are just as important and part of creating a whole healthy being. Okay, I want to be respectful of your time. So I do have one last question for you that I love to ask everyone, especially being an expert. What are your health goals?
Gosh, well, I think that's a great question. I'm really big on, maybe you guys can already tell by today's conversation, practicality in our goals. And so a couple of those are being able to exercise at the gym, for me, moderate weight training 3 days a week, doing a low impact like a bar, a Pilates, or a yoga once a week. Not a goal at this point, but part of my routine, daily walks with my dogs. They need it because they are crazy. And it's a great way for me to move and add more circulation to my body. A goal as a general goal, but also talking about my health. I mentioned I have autoimmune and chronic conditions. I have POTS and dysautonomia. I've been diagnosed for almost a decade and a half now. 100 ounces of water a day. It's why you see me doing my Stanley throughout this podcast episode if you're watching the video form. Making sure those things are happening from a physical perspective and an internal perspective, but also practicing what I preach. So enjoying food, balancing food, prioritizing protein, fruits and vegetable intake, important. I have POTS, so I, pour extra salt on everything. I don't recommend that for the average person, which is why we, need to consider our health conditions when we're setting our goals as well. I also like to focus on my mind and my lifestyle choices as well. So I focus on red light therapy. I make sure that I'm reading, whether it's a fictional or a non-fictional book, and make sure that I'm taking care of myself through therapy, through journaling, through meditation, or even just like, hey, like that, car just sped past me and it stressed me out a little bit. Let me take a couple deep breaths, and really just regulating my body the best way that I can.
Amazing. I love that. And I love hearing from the experts what they're working on, because it does remind everyone that we all have goals that we're working on. You've never fully arrived, right? Like nobody's perfect, even the experts, even if it seems like it. And so that's for me, like I love asking this question because I think it really does a great job of humanizing those that we look up to. And it's so important. Remember, we're all on a journey. 100%. So where can people find you if they want to work with you or follow you, all the things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Coach Kylie. You can find me at Coach Kylie on TikTok, on Instagram, and Pinterest if you want some fun jazz there. If you want to listen to the podcast, you can find it on Spotify, Apple, Audible, Prime, as well as my website, powerful.com. It's really focusing on empowering women. That's what we're here to do. If you can't tell, it's what I love doing. And that's also a great spot. pwhrfl.com is a great place to learn a little bit about what I do. If you're interested in having a health professional on your side to kind of tackle some of the goals that you have going on, one for the new year, if you are a New Year's resolution girly, or if you're the type of girly who's like, I make change when I want to make change, and you're ready to do that now, I'm always here and I've got your back. I always like hearing too when people listen to podcasts or things that I do. So feel free to send me a message on Instagram or TikTok. I don't bite. I love hearing those types of things.
Amazing. Thank you so much. You guys check her out. I'll make sure to link her website and where you can find her socials in the show notes. So go ahead and go there if you are curious. Kylie, thank you so much for joining me today and for bringing all the education for the girls.
Yeah, of course. It was fun. I'm really glad that we could do this together, Delaney.
Me too. Thank you. Well, you guys, thanks so much for listening, and I will talk to you soon. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.